Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everyone. Today we shall be starting a new topic, which is called Paramatta Jathikas, and I hope I was able to share the link. It was shared yesterday night, actually, and most of you were able to collect the link. And so I would request Dr. Ryan to share the link in the Zoom chat box. So if anyone missed the link or couldn't download it, they can easily download the handout and continue with the lecture. So till now we have discussed, I think we need to go back to the original chart to keep on reminding what we have been discussing so far, because some of the terminologies have been alien to some listeners, especially ones who are not familiar with the Pali. So I'll be repeating the same things for few weeks, the same the wordings that I have been using recently. So it will stick in our minds. So first we had the chart like Paramatta, which was called ultimacy. Then we divided it into like Sankata, conditioned, Sankata Paramatta. Then we had unconditioned, Asankata Paramatta. Then under the Sankata conditioned realities, we had four groups, Paramatta, which are called Paramatta Dhammas. Then we had Upadino Dhamma. Then today we are going to discuss about Paramatta Jathikas. And then lastly, Anupanna Dhamma. And Paramatta Dhammas were divided into three groups: Chitta, the consciousness; Cetasika, mental factors; and Rupa. Then yes, last week we discussed about the Upadino Dhammas. Sankata Paramatta was fivefold. We had 5 types of Nibbana. I'll not be writing it today. Tadanga, Sammuti, Tadanga, Vikambana, Samucheda, and Nissarana. Then, apart from them, are called the Panyati concepts. So we'll be discussing them one after one each week. So we had 5 types of Nibbana, which we'll be discussing in another few weeks. So till now we have discussed the main characteristics of Paramatta. If something to be called a Paramatta, ultimacy, if something falls into the group of ultimate natures, that can be verified in terms of fourfold functions, fourfold methods mentioned in the Buddhist teachings. That one should be able to know it by its intrinsic nature. One should be able to, sometimes some realities can be abandoned, some can be attained, and some can be developed. If any nature can be is applicable into any of these functions, that is we term it an ultimate nature. We call ultimate nature. So those ultimate natures are twofold, which depend on other ultimate natures. Sankata Paramatta means they need the support of other ultimate natures. They cannot exist alone. Asankata Paramattas can exist alone without the support of others. Then in the Sankata Paramatta field, we find 4 main categories. The first is the Paramatta Dhammas, ultimate realities, which we divide into 3: Chitta, the consciousness; Cetasika, the mental factors, like anger, hatred, and so forth, attachment, lust, delusion, wisdom, and so forth. Then Rupa, the material stuff. What are the basic elements of the materiality? Then we discussed about another, we also, if you remember, we drew a line under this showing that these are now, these are the main, this is the main part of the Sankata Paramattas, the ultimate reality. And out of the, some of the ultimate realities do remain in certain stages. I would call them certain stages, certain states. So in such we can find such three of such states, Upadino Dhammas, which we explained last week, were the resultants, the outcomes of a karma that had gained the opportunity to give it fruits, like to result. It means a karma, when we do a karma, we know according to Buddhism, there will be a result. But the karma cannot just give the results, it has to gain an opportunity, something, a phenomenon called gaining the opportunity. Laddokasa karma, it becomes. The karma has to gain the opportunity, which is very difficult to explain in terms of a diagram or in terms of logic, that what this phenomenon is. So that's why in the end, Buddha has mentioned that entirely the karma cannot be understood based on logic. So a karma is done and its results are going to come. And for that, the karma needs an opportunity to produce its products or results. So when a karma has gained the opportunity, it takes time. Like it doesn't immediately. Sometimes it may give results immediately as it gains the opportunity. But in some cases, like it may take some time. So when the karma has gained the opportunity, when the result has not arisen yet, during that period, while the resultant is supposed to arise, that resultant is called Upadino Dhamma. That resultant, which has not arisen yet, but which is bound to arise. So its existence was expressed by the Buddha in the Pottapada Sutta. We discussed about this point. So he considered that the resultant which is going to happen because of the karma which gained the opportunity is considered as existing already. So then now we move into another topic, another new topic called Paramatta Jathikas, which mainly focuses about some other latent tendencies, latent natures. Some are habits, some are defilements, some is the force of the karma. So in the previous lecture, we discussed about the Upadino Dhamma are the resultant. So karma, we done the karma energy, force of karma, we can call karmic force. We have not done any karmic force, and that karmic force would gain opportunity, and then it would make the results. So after this, after gaining the opportunity, right? After gaining the opportunity, so this result, even though it has not arisen yet, this is called Upadino Dhamma. Upadino Dhamma are this, not the karmic force. Karmic force is never called Upadino. Upadino Dhamma are the resultant that are going to happen, either pleasant or unpleasant. The karmic force, the karma is the ultimate reality, Paramatta Dhamma. Karma arises, we do a karma with a chetana, like intention. It arises, passes away, a new intention arises, passes away, a certain force is become, we can call, is implanted onto the mind stream. So this implanted force remains as a certain stage, a certain kind of energy, we can call a force. That force is not the Upadino Dhamma. The karma we did is Paramatta Dhamma. So this is a different category. So this is a different category. This is a Paramatta Dhamma, PD. These are different categories. So in this category, we have the defilements, the karmic force, and so forth. So this Paramatta Jatika are a different realm. Realm means it's I would not use the word dimension, but it's something different from Chitta, Chetasika, and Rupa. But according to the Buddhist teachings, it does exist even at this moment. It does exist even at this moment. We'll have a holistic idea, practical idea about that at the end of the lecture. So this is the topic that we are going to start today. I'll be discussing only 1 week. 1 week means only 1 day. We're going to cover roughly the general idea of Paramatta Jathikas. But if we go into deep into each and every topic, it would be a very interesting, at the same time, useful information are there that can be integrated into our daily life. So before we go into the a survey, because it's for the I plan to do it because for the benefit of our lectures, for the improvement of our lectures. So for 5 minutes from now, I will be one of my friends. Actually, he was one of my very good classmates who studied together with me in Sri Lanka. So in my college. So he is now at the lecturer of University of Sunshine Coast in Australia, and he is also a adjunct lecturer of the Queensland University and Technology, and he is a doctor who has done in engineering. So he'll be sharing one kind of chart or few questions. So it will be really grateful that if you could tick the questions, tick the answers that you feel about our lectures. There are the answers will be anonymous, like no names will be recorded. So, but we need your feedback for the improvement of our further lectures. So, Dr. Ryan, if you are the host, please unmute Mr. Charit Ratnayaka, Dr. Charit Ratnayaka. So he'll explain a bit about this survey. It will take only 5 minutes. It's very, very short type of a survey. It will be helpful to our class. So because he'll be leaving immediately after the class, so we better do it now, and then we can continue with the lecture. So Dr. Ryan, can you unmute Mr. Charit Ratnayaka? So
yes, I already did, Bhante.
Okay, please, Charit, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Avasarai Swamin answer. Thanks, Dr. Ryan. So, hi everyone. So as Swamin mentioned, so this is a quick survey that is going to be done in Google Forms. I will send you the link right now. And a couple of things before I send you. So this is an entirely anonymous survey, and it's entirely voluntary. There is no force at all for you to take part. It will only take 2 to 3 minutes. You'll see the questions are simple, and they are mainly about the lectures that are happening. And one of the, as Swamin Wahanse mentioned, one of the intentions of doing that is it is helpful for Swamin Wahanse to get an idea about how the lectures are proceeding and how the future lectures can be further strengthened using your perspectives as the participants or the students of this lecture series. At the same time, it will not just help this lecture series, but even in the future lecture series that Swamin Wahanse is going to conduct, it will be helpful for Swamin Wahanse to understand about the student perspectives. So without taking further time, I'll send you the link. When you click on it, you will be directed to a Google form which has 7 questions, and 6 of those are multiple choice questions. And if you have any questions whatsoever about those questions, let us know if you wanted any idea. But the last question is an open-ended question where if you have any other comments, you can add, but that is not mandatory, even if you're going to submit the survey.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there anything else that we needed to mention, Swamin Wahanse?
I think it's clear. If anyone has anything to ask.
And we cannot see who's submitting the responses, but we can see the responses, and only Swamin Wahanse and I can see the responses as it has been set up. And once you have submitted the responses, I will submit all the responses in the form of a document to Swamin Wahanse, so Swamin Wahanse can get an idea about your comments.
So please be free to do the answers. The last question, as he said, the last question is not mandatory, so you can even submit without giving a suggestion, and it will be really useful for our to how to adjust our way of teaching, and also some with future lectures even, as he said.
Okay, so I can see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can see that the participants are submitting the responses now. Yep.
Okay. We'll take 3 more minutes, Jared.
Am I sorry?
කොලේ පාට පේනව නේද?
Swamin Wahanse, we've got 16 responses so far, so that is a very good response rate.
Okay.
As I've seen. So, and if you have completed it, please make sure, if you have answered the questions, please make sure that you click the submit button in the end at the bottom of the survey. And even if you wanted to complete it later, and if you have the link, feel free to do so. Your thoughts will be helpful for the to get an understanding about the student perceptions and the participant perceptions. So I mean, answer, I think.
Okay, it's fair enough, right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much, Charit. Thank you for your all the arrangements and all the support given.
No worries. So I answer.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you very much for everyone who submitted, and it will be really a great support for me. And if you have any other further ideas, please be free to mention, even personally or in the group. They are always very welcome. Then we'll go into the topic. Now we are talking about Paramatta Jathikas, the certain natures. So here we can see the normal diagram that I have been using to explain the existence. So these are the Chitta, Chetasikas and Rupas within the two lines of Chitta and mentality and materiality. So they arise and pass away. And they do arise in clusters, not alone. Always the conditioned realities arise in clusters. We have mental clusters and physical clusters. And then there is always birth and death, which defines one life. So between these two instances, birth and death, we define it as one life. So then for that, should I get a red pen? Yeah. Now this birth, we know that is produced by it's not bright enough. Dr. Ryan, can you see this, what I'm writing, the color, red color?
Yes, I can, Bhante.
Okay, right. Karma is the thing that produces this rebirth. And for that, we know the karma needs the support of ignorance. Avijja, I'll be using the Pali words, sorry for that. Avijja and tanha. Tanha is craving, ignorance and craving. Karma needs the support of this. So they can produce a life like a birth. So this karma, normally we say, if this was a chetana means the volition. Chetana, the karma we can call. Karma. After the karma arises and passes away, the chetana, the volition of a certain act, arises and passes away. A certain kind of energy remains in the mind stream. We call it karma, but it's a force. It's not the karma itself. Because karma is observable. It is a volition, it's a chetana. It appears in our mind. It has the ability to do certain acts. But this force remains as a latent potency, ability to produce results in future. And this karma is supported by avijja and tanha. Only then it is able, one day, it will get the opportunity and produce the results. It will get the opportunity and produce the results. For example, if we are living here till, if I write it in a straight line, draw it in a straight line from here, then future it will remain, and after it gets the opportunity, it will produce. After it gains the opportunity, the resultants that are going to happen were called upadino dhammas. This is so far, that's what we have discussed so far. Then today we are going to discuss about these natures which are hidden. Sometimes we can call the mind, like in some Western psychology, we call about two layers of mind. The well-aware mind and the hidden mind. I'm not sure what kind of a word they use. So anyway, so subconscious mind. So this subconscious and the conscious mind, they term it like that. I'm not going to talk it as subconscious mind. That's one thing that I need to express. I'm not going to term it as subconscious mind, but it is like a subconscious thing. This greatly affects the conscious mind. This has a great relationship with the conscious mind. So this field of realities are called Paramatta Jathikas. Not the resultant that is going to happen due to a karma which gains opportunity, not the realities which arise as Chitta, Chetasika, Rupa. This is a different layer. One thing to remind, that the Theravadians, in the third council, there were sects that suggested that this layer is completely a different phenomenon or a reality from this layer. This Chitta, Chetasika and Rupas, which we can observe, which we can know, and this layer of Paramatta Jathikas are completely different because they do possess different characteristics. They do possess different characteristics. But the Theravadians didn't want to bring that ideology or idea into their sect. I'll use the word ideology, not in a reproaching sense. So this idea they didn't decide to accept this, like bring into. So what they said was, these are different stages of these realities, some of these realities. We know avidya is ignorance, which arises in the mind. We know craving is a mental factor, which arises in the mind. We know kamma is chetana, chetanaham bhikkave kammam vadami, that we do in the mind. So these are observable, we know that. But these are different stages of these mental states that we experience in day-to-day life. These are different stages. So what they are saying is, the avidya which remains in the latent level, arises as a mental factor. This avidya is not a separate entity or a separate reality from the avidya which arises. That is the Theravadians' idea. This avidya which arises is not a separate reality from which was latent before. Why do they come to that idea? Because it's obvious that, for example, while we are doing a wholesome act like teaching Dhamma or meditating or chanting or giving charity, developing our compassion or loving kindness, we do not get any unwholesome thoughts. We have very pure, undefiled mind. But at the same time, we know as non-arahants, as the ones who have not become arahants, we do possess a potency for the ignorance. We do possess a tendency towards craving, towards all the defilements. So the Buddha would always say a non-arahant is together with defilements. Saraga Pugala, a person with raga, despite his state of the mind. Despite his state of the mind. Even though he was, at that time, while he was doing vipassana meditation or samatha meditation, we have to accept the moments of attainment of Magga and Phala. It's a different case because there's a different way of naming it. All the other moments, we normally say the person is not an arahant, not a perfectly or fully enlightened person. We say that he do possess defilements. Even though the mind is pure in a certain moment. Think this was a wholesome deed that someone we do. At that level, we have a latent ignorance and latent craving and latent defilements. So according to the Buddhist theory, even the mind was pure at that time, as the person possesses a tendency towards the unwholesomeness. He is not completely freed from the defilements. So then what happens is these stages of defilement, we know this is a sleeping stage of the defilements. This is the awakened stage of the defilement when they arise in the mind. But the Buddha has used the same terminologies referring to both the stages. That is the thing. Buddha has not differentiated them separately. But there are few suttas in which the Buddha, especially the Mahamalukya Putta Sutta, which we have written in the handout, Buddha clearly defines that the defilement which arises in the mind and the defilement which lays latently. So we are bound to the samsara with these latent defilements, not with the defilements that arises in the mind. Because otherwise, if we are bound to the samsara with the defilements that arise in the mind while we are doing wholesome deeds, technically we are freed from samsara. We are not bound to the samsara. But it's not the case. The fact is it's not like that. Though we do the wholesome deeds, as long as we are not fully enlightened arahants, we are bound with the samsara. So with what we are bound? With these latent forces, latent natures. The same thing happens with karma. Yes, last week also we discussed the karma is done, it passes away, a latent force remains in our mind stream. So these are the two most evident or most discussed latent natures. These are the defilements, we can call them, if I categorize them as defilements. And this is karma. We know that. I think we don't need a translation for that. Then there are some other such tendencies. One is called vasana. I think I have given you in the handout. Vasana is habits, potency due to, we normally call unwholesome, potency for unwholesome habits. Yeah, we normally say potency of habits caused by unwholesome defilements, we can call. Normally, I think some of you have been familiar with this word. When the Buddha eradicates the defilements, he eradicates together with this potency for habits, potency for habits, or of habits. That's why sometimes arahants do not completely eradicate this vasana. Even we do have vasana. It's like this. When the defilements are present, the vasana is more powerful. The habits remain, because these are outcomes of this defilement. These are when certain defilements have been practiced or developed in a mind stream for a longer period, a certain habits remains in the mind stream even after the defilements have been eradicated. The example was given like when the liquor, a pot of liquor, even though we completely cleanse it, there's still some smell within it, because we know scientifically there are small particles still remaining within the air or within the surface of the pot. So we still can get some smell. Another nice example is when an elephant has been tightened with or bound with chains for a longer period. He has limitations in stretching his limbs. So being used to walk in a constrained manner for a longer period, even after the chains has been removed, he still has the habit of walking in the same manner as the chains are already there. Even the chains are removed. So this constraint happens because of the chains. So chains were the main reason, but even they have been removed, still certain if its effects are still there. So likewise, arahant would completely eradicate the defilements, but the effects of vasana, a certain amount of vasana, it's not, because vasana is greatly depending on the defilements. So when the defilements are there, vasana are more powerful. Vasana is the habits. So our vasana is more powerful than of a noble being. But when the defilements are eradicated, completely removed, in some cases, in some means like arahants, this vasana still remains. A Buddha would completely burn out not only the defilements, but also the habits, impacts, the potency of habits caused by this defilement. It's like, for example, if you take the Maggacitta as a fire. So normal arahant's fire would take this out, but this vasana would still remain. Certain habits would remain, not all the habits, the certain habits that are very, very powerful, like have been implanted in the mind for a longer period, will still remain. But when the wisdom is higher, like a Samma Sambuddha, so the path consciousness has a great power. So when it eradicates the defilements, it does not eradicate only this, but it completely, without any remnant, vasana would also be eradicated. Like if we take this as the dirt, the fire is so huge, so powerful, that it would completely remove the entire thing, even the effects caused by the defilement. So the arahants, so it depends on how powerful our wisdom is. So therefore, normally an arahant would have a certain degree of vasana. So he would, like the base example was Pilinda Vacha arahant. He had been a Brahmin for many years, many lives. So he used to behave in a manner like a conceited manner, even after being an arahant, because of his habits. There was an arahant who has been an elephant for many lives, and he had to eat during the day, watch of day. He used to eat many times. He couldn't stop himself. It's not because of craving, because of his habit. And there was Arahant who was a cow for many lives, and the cows do that. I don't know the word for that. Like there's a specific word that they bring the food out and chew and swallow it again. So this Arahant didn't have a control over it, and when he's not aware, he used to do that. He couldn't control it. That has become a certain habit. And also there are mentioning about potency of habits caused by defilements, and also potency of habits caused by wholesomeness is also mentioned, which is called Kusalavasana, which we do not discuss much in the literature. We normally say some of the behaviors like of the Sariputta is mentioned to be are caused by Kusalavasanas. So anyway, so these are the habits. Normally we focus, when we say the vasana, we are talking about the unbeneficial, like the habits that are caused by defilement. So these are also, now what we are going to say is, now this is a certain stage of the defilement, is the effect of the defilements. We call it the Vasana Khilesha. So Arahant's mind, not only Arahant's, even our minds, when it is pure, this Vasana does affect the mind stream. So that's why Arahants, being completely freed from defilements, completely a pure mind, a level of Vasana would affect them in certain places sometimes, and they do certain acts in a manner as if they are done by a person with defilements. So these are different stages. And we have few more stages like Asaya. Asaya. We normally translate this Asaya as abode of the mind. So this is also something caused by our previous practice, especially from previous lives. Now, if someone has developed a wrong view for many lives, like there is no rebirth, or there is no command in his effects, so this becomes a habit in his mind, embedded in his mind stream. So even while his mind is pure, his mind has a great tendency to go into these ideologies. So such thoughts appear. They are very similar to the Anusaya. They are similar to the Anusaya, but some natures, defilements, have been specifically addressed as the Asaya, or the abode of the mind, because they tend to be in the mind more often in such thoughts. Like Anusaya are the 7 types of defilements that follow our mind. They can come anytime. But out of the Anusayas, some of the defilements, certain people's minds are more attracted towards certain types of defilements. So that's why it's called Asaya, the abode of the mind. They tend to be in such intentions. Like some people are cruel, that they do enjoy harming others, hurting others. So always the cruel thoughts comes into their mind. So it is their abode. Some have wrong views. They always consider about against the phenomenon according to Buddhism. And also this Asaya, unlike the Anusaya, which is a negative aspect of the mind always, Asaya is also found explained in the wholesome side, like the correct view. If someone has practiced the correct view for many years, many lives, for instance, Bodhisattva's life, we can look into the Bodhisattvas, and also some human beings. I know some that they say that even from the childhood, that some tend, according to Buddhism, I'm talking, according to Buddhist perspective, they said they never accepted the theory, creationist theory, that this world was created by someone in an upper realm, and who was observing the world, that it didn't fit to them, even from the childhood. So what was the reason? Main reason, their mind has been soaked in this kind of asaya for many lives, in this kind of a wholesome side, and that has become their abode of the mind. So their mind does not accept such ideologies. It is against that, even the correct view. And also the vipassana, if the vipassana has been practiced for years and well established in the mind, it's very difficult to get out of the vipassana actually. That is also one reason. So they always have that thoughts of impermanence, suffering, non-self within them. So the mind is dragged towards, we can say the mind is dragged towards these asaya, or the mind is living in these kind of thoughts. But these tendencies are even now, for instance, if someone has a good asaya means in the positive side, with the correct waves, with correct vision, and also some have asaya of helping others who are naturally helping the other beings. So in such asayas are found. Now, even while a person who is doing some cruel act because of a wrong association or some other reason, immediately when, now that's what we see now, people are following the wrong path due to different reasons. But whenever they get the dharma, whenever they get the correct teachings, they quickly come back to the teaching, and they go into a very deep level of the teaching, the practice, and they become very successful. We have lots of stories of such people in the Buddhist teachings. So what was the reason? Temporarily their minds were occupied with defilements, their minds were defiled, but there was a great tendency that their mind could be taken back towards the wholesome side. So the speciality of a Buddha is, even while a person is in a wrong path, he is able to observe this asaya of another person. Maybe he was doing some unwholesome acts, killing due to some reason, but he knows that this person has a great potency for non-killing, that the compassionate asaya. So he preaches the Dhamma and he knows how to take him back. And this, on the other contrary, people may be very friendly or has a good will to the society because the condition suits that, but the Buddha knows this person can easily go back into the cruelty. So which happens with one of the ladies in ancient India, where the Buddha lived, a devotee, a servant. She had a good reputation as a respected lady in the society, very much compassionate, and also taking care, very caring of others. But the servant wanted to test her real compassion. So she, just 3 days, she woke up late, giving up the work in the house. So in the third day, gradually her anger grew. In the third day, she took a stick, and then she broke her head in the end. So her real qualities were revealed. It's not a good thing, like what happened to her was something pity, but that is the example we give. Like, even the person has different mindset due to certain conditions, he may have a different asaya. At the same time, a person who has a cruel asaya is more often to do cruel things. A person with a compassionate asaya would do compassionate things. But there are some instances, due to certain other conditions, this may not match each other. So the speciality of the Buddha is he is able to observe this and to guide us according to our asayas and so forth. So these are, and also we have something called adhimutta, which is also inclination. So these are the, there are, I think I have given in the 1.42, there are a few lists. Kamma sati, kamma force is also such a nature. This kamma force follows our mind, and it brings forth a result. And so while they are a latent potency, we are unable to observe them. So according to the Theravadians, Buddha is said to be able, was in the capability of observing. He had non-parallel wisdoms, like peculiar wisdoms that even Pacceka Buddha does not possess, even Sariputta could not possess. So he was able to look in some of those wisdoms, especially 3, he was able to look into these potencies, which are the hidden potencies. So preach the Dhamma according to the character. So these are the things that define our character. One reason to define our character. The other reason to define our character is our patisandhi, the kamma which gave the patisandhi. So there are 2 reasons to define our characters. So these latent potencies, the habits that we bring from past lives, and the kamma which gave the rebirth. So I'm not going to take a long time in that. Take time in that. So then the next thing is, these all potencies are certain stages of certain mentalities, certain stages of certain mentalities. means, like if you take the dosa, for example, the anger, hatred, whatever word we use. So it arises in our mind. It has two main stages, the latent stage, the obsessive stage. The obsessive stage and the latent stage. Obsessive stage, the obsession stage of obsession means it arises in our mind. So we can observe, even others can observe. And also there is a third stage, which is called transgressive stage, in which we execute our acts due to the dosa which has arisen in our mind. That's the time that we start to kill or to use harsh word, abuse someone, that we cannot suppress the pressure given by this dosa which has arisen in the mind. So this transgressive level and the obsessive level, I'll take it as one thing, because in both the cases, dosa has arisen in our mind. Then while we are practicing the metta, while we are doing the loving kindness, even that as dosa, there's a potency within us for dosa, as long as we don't become anagamis. So these are the two stages of dosa: the obsessive level, the potential level, or the latent level. Same thing with the so these are different stages. We don't call them separate realities. And the karma we do, it arises in the mind, then it remains in our mind stream. Even after the karma has been done, this energy of the karma would follow us. So though I use the word energy or the force, according to the tradition, it is a one stage of the chetana. It's a different stage of the chetana. That's what I have mentioned in the 1.45 paragraph, right? 1.445 paragraph. Then 1.46 that we have already discussed, even though they have clear different characteristics. For example, dosa in this which arise in the mind has an object. It always has an object. The mind never arises without an object. I think someone asked the question, even while it observes the nothingness, then the nothingness is the object. So normally we say no mind, no chetasika arises without an object. So dosa surely has an object, but this, the latent level, it doesn't have an object. That's very obvious, because while we are practicing metta to someone, the potency is not in the nature of taking an object. But the thing is, because it doesn't have an object, just because it doesn't have an object in this stage, we are not going to separate it as a separate reality. That means, according to Theravadians, like there is only one dosa. Frankly saying, there's only one dosa. That dosa has two stages: the latent stage, the obsessive, the visible stage, or the active stage, I would call latent stage, and the active stage. That is a much better word to use. But there is a certain activeness here. But anyway, the active stage means the stage in which we can observe the dosa, and by which the dosa does we do actions with dosa, trigger certain actions. So in the karma also, these are two different stages. So even though they have, surely now this chetana has an object. For example, killing, there's an object, but this karma force doesn't have an object. But we are not in the position to differentiate them as two different realities like some other sects who did. So therefore, within the literature, especially within the canon, these two stages have been addressed with the same terminologies. As Dr. Ryan asked last week, a very good question, like, now, when a karma is going to give result, is it the karma which is going to give result, or the force of the karma, or karma sati? Is it the karma or the karma sati? Actually, the karma sati, the force, is gaining the opportunity to give result, because the karma has already passed away. But within the literature, and also by the Buddha, this force has been addressed with the name of karma. So we say the ancient karma, even though it has passed, puranampi samanang, even though the karma has passed away completely, it gains the opportunity to give results. So what gains the opportunity? The force of the karma. So which force of the karma belongs to this karma. But these two stages, we don't differentiate as two realities. So we use the same terms referring to these stages. So the same avijja, same dosa, same craving arises as a mental factor. So for the easiness, sometimes we may say the mental factor of dosa, the latent dosa, but normally in the literature we find we are with dosa. So when the term comes, we are with dosa, it can be either our mind is connected with dosa or our mind has a potency of dosa. Right? And then the next thing to remind is they do associate the mind stream. They associate doesn't mean that they have arisen in the mind like a mental factor. They have not arisen. They're associating. How do we say that they are associating? Why do we say they are associating if they are not connected? Like chitta and chetasikas are connected. They appear in a cluster. We can observe them separately. So is it connected? Does it mean that these latent potencies are connected? Means, for example, while someone do a kusala, dosa is in it. Is the ignorance is in it? No. Theravadians have a very clear answer for that. No. Never a defilement is connected with the wholesome mind. But that defilement does associate the wholesome mind. So there are two types of associations. Association in connection. Chitta and Chetasika are associating each other connectedly. And they take a name, one object at one time. But at that time, there are certain latent forces which associate the mind in a different manner, not in the way that Chitta and Chetasikas are connected. So according the Theravadins would never say wholesome Chitta is mixed with unwholesomeness. No, but it is affected by unwholesomeness. So that's why in the diagram, I use Chitta, Chetasikas together here and drew it in a different layer. But this is not how it happens, because one chitta exists at one time and it's not a physical thing. So this is unexplainable in terms of like it's difficult to express and also difficult to depict in such a manner. So what we can say is, according to Theravadians, they are associated in the mind stream, but we have to keep in mind that association is different from how Chitta and Chetasikas are associating each other at a one mind moment, right? So that is also something that we have to keep in mind. Then their existence can be known by the effect they make upon the mind stream. Effect they make upon the mind stream. So when a certain object comes, we know the defilements do arise. And also, another very good example, like our mind is agitated sometimes. Now we are attracted to a certain object, but we know that it is not good, so we try our best to get out of that. Or we are agitated by someone who has accused us. So when we go away, we just want to focus on our driving, or we just want to focus on our stuff, but it keeps on coming into us. It's very difficult to stop this. Even we try our best, it's very difficult. So only when we are train our mind, we are able to just to give up it and come. So why is this? When we are focusing, when we are contemplating metta, or when we are contemplating on the Buddha, or trying to focus on our breath, it's the wholesome mind. Why can't it last long like in other occasions? Sometimes when we go to a retreat, we'll be able to focus on our breath for a longer period. But when a certain incident happens to us, when we have a certain argument with someone, or if someone has abused us or accused us, especially baselessly, or if we were given unfair judgment, when we go back into practice, we are unable to continue as before. Why is that? Because when we start in normal sessions, this is the kusala. So there's no akusala. We can continue with it. But after we have been accused, or we face certain unhealthy situations, when we come into meditation, few kusala mind moments, then it falls into akusala. Then we try again back into kusala. But it comes back again, akusala arises. Maybe akusala is more. Why is that? What is the difference? Because of the impact of these latent defilements. In future, if we have time, if we are fortunate enough to continue with these sessions, we discuss these latent forces, like especially the latent defilements, we define it in specifically 3 stages. There is a stage of, even in this latent level, there is a latent tendency which has been activated, which is more pumped, which is more aggressive. Sometimes they are calm. So when a certain incident happens, our latent defilements are activated. Even while we put our effort to meditate, this keeps on hitting our mind. Hitting means keep on influencing our mind. So what happens in a different occasion where we were able to keep on continuing with the wholesome mindset, when an unpleasant incident happens, when our defilements are activated, the latent level, it arises and it gets activated. What happens, even we try back to go into the normal sessions of meditation, it doesn't let us do so. This activation keeps on happening, keeps on affecting, and the unwholesome mind starts to come up, right? So this is how we see its effect. And the effect of karma is very obvious. When the near close to death, the three signs are brought to the mind with this karma, and also our life continues because of these latent defilements. So they are affecting. The thing is that they are affecting our mind. They are affecting. So then we go into we want to conclude the lecture actually. So in the Mahamalukya Sutta, I have given in the handout. Mahamalukya Putta Sutta in Majjhima Nikaya. Majjhima Nikaya, book 2. Right, Mahamalukya Putta Sutta. Buddha asked a question. What are the defilements? What are the fetters? Sangyojana. So Mahamalukya had an idea. The one monk, Mahamalukya Putta means a monk, name of a monk. He said we are bound to the samsara because of the defilement which arise in the mind stream. So the Buddha said, if you say so, we would be subject to. He mentioned that. He mentioned that we would be subject to the censure of means reproach, or means the rejection of adherents of other religions. They would say, so it means when mind is wholesome, you are not bound with the samsara. So the Buddha mentioned, no. What I'm saying is not the defilements that arise in the mind. I'm talking about the uneradicated defilements that binds you to the samsara. So this is a very clear example in the sutta that he advocated the existence of these latent forces. It was specifically focused on these defilements, and in some places we find about the karma, and some places we can find about this vasana and all this. So these are the examples that we can fetch from the literature that Buddha advocated about the existence of certain potencies, which we call Paramatta Jatika. The Paramatta Jatika term was adapted, the Paramatta Jathikas, from the Paramatta Dipani, the Tika. Paramatta means ultimate. Jatika means they belong to the ultimate group, but they are not ultimate realities because they have not arisen as mental in clusters, right, as realities. So that is the things that then finally these natures should not be considered as past, present, or future, because we have a specific, very clear definition of a past, present, future. If something has arisen and passed away, that is past. If something had arisen but not passed away yet, it's called present. Something which has not arisen is future. So they are in a different dimension, the different sphere. So they don't fit to be called past, present, or future. But they have very similar characteristic of a present reality because they influence the mind at that moment while they're existing. So they were given by Lady Sayadaw a name called Pachuppanna Samanya, similar to the present. We don't call them present because the Theravadians have a very specific definition of present, past, future. So they call it similar to present. Then, these natures, some of these natures can be eradicated by the path. These can be eradicated directly. Karma can be eradicated by eradicating the defilements. So, and vasana can be fully eradicated by a Sambuddha. And these eradication of asaya and also the unwholesome stuff can be also predicted. I'm not very clear about the eradication. So anyway, so these are the points that that I would like to discuss. So today we focused on a different layer of the consciousness, layer means different different natures which affect the consciousness, which are called Paramatta Jathikas, which are not in the stage of arising, passing, arising or persisting or passing away, but they do influence the mind greatly, and their existence has been clearly explained in the literature. And yeah, so they can be abandoned by certain means, and also they do play a huge role in our mind, in our life, day-to-day life. So what we have to abandon in terms of getting liberated, we have to focus on these kilesas, not the kilesa which arise in the mind, because the kilesa which arise in the mind surely passes away immediately. What we have to eradicate is the latent forces. Yeah. So these are the points that I would like to discuss, and they are greatly influential into explaining the rebirth and also the vipassana meditation. Yes, I conclude the lecture with this, leaving the panel for the Q&A session. Yeah.
Okay, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much, Bhante. Hello, everyone. So as usual, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand or you can put your question in the chat box. Hi, Bhante. So I have a question here. So in the handouts, you gave the like seven instances of this Paramatta Jatika. So that is not the exhaustive list, right, Bhante?
Yes, not the exhaustive list. No.
Okay.
Not
So
the
then can we say that if anything that has the this kind of potential natures, then that thing also belongs to this Paramatta Jatika, Bhante?
Yes, but only thing that we have to consider is whether whether we categorize them, give them a separate position, or we can put it into something which is mentioned in the well, this is not an exhausted list. There are some more, and I'm not confident to list them as it like this is the real list. So the reason was some points that we can put, but I'm doubting whether something can fit into asaya or whether it can get a separate number. So other than that, all these potencies should be put here. Yeah.
I see. And then also it's just a so one thing that I see that it can fit into this category is the parami, but I just don't see why you don't put it here because parami is kind of an important one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's normally, yeah, it should be. It seems like. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We
Okay.
will think about that. Yeah, that's something that I actually, to be true, something I didn't think of. Thank you for that insight. I'll think about that.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante. Okay. Please go ahead, Robin.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ryan. Good morning, Bhante.
Morning, Robin.
Thank you for today's lecture, Bhante. Bhante, I have a question. So, since I have learned that there is one more simple method of paticca samuppada, which is describing them as the avijja, tanha, upadana, sankhara, and kamma, Bhante. And so, like all kinds of karma can produce its result when this process is still occurring, Bhante. So when there is avijja and tanha as the supporting, then the rebirth can happen, Bhante. But I think that because of not thinking this deeply, this has led to some kind of misunderstanding, including by me, that, for example, when the bodhisattva want to be the Buddha, that is also influenced by because of tanha, Bhante. But since I've learned about this Paramatta Jatika, so is it correct that it is the Paramatta Jatika that's influenced this, Bhante? But not the tanha in the existing moment, like the paccuppanna moment,
which arises in mind. I'll detail the question because sometimes I get you. I think I got your idea. I'll repeat the question for the clarity of all the listeners. Maybe I'm doubting whether the idea was everyone had a clear idea on it. I think what you are saying is now, according to Paticca Samuppada, I think the dependent origination, most of you are aware, dependent origination. because of avidya, ignorance, causes sankhara, means karma, right? So this sankhara gives rebirth, vijnana. I'll just use the word rebirth, but there are a few types of vijnana for the easiness, right? So now we are all born with a karma, right? We are all born with a karma. So that karma needs to have the support of ignorance. So does it mean, according to the dependent origination, before we now we do an unwholesome act? It's obvious the karma is mixed with ignorance. That's why we do the ignorance, do the unwholesome act. So now, is it like when we do a wholesome act, is it always necessary that our mind is ignorant before the act? Like we give a dana, so to complete the paticca the karma should have the support of ignorance. So is it that whatever karma we do, maybe we are offering to a Buddha, or we are giving, practicing sila, or we are giving a dana with pure mind. Now, sometimes people may give dana to get luxuries or to become famous or to get good results in samsara. So there we can see that there is some craving in it. So it's obvious. Now because of ignorance, sometimes people give dana to become this and this in the samsara. So ignorance is present before we do the dana. But some cases we just give without any expectation, even without wishing nirvana, just for the compassion feeling for the beings. That is one kind of, mostly in the people who don't believe in karma, have such a pure mind that they just give without any expectations. But whether that is higher or lower in terms of effects, that is a different case that we'll have to be discussing based on the wisdom. Then some people they give, I just don't want anything in the samsara, I just want to get delivered out of the samsara, just a deliverance. So in such a pure mindset, is it that avidya arises before deed? This is your question, isn't it, Robin?
Yes, Bhante.
Right?
Yes.
So to fill
like
Samuppada, is it necessary that always avidya arises before we do the whatever karma?
yes, Bhante. Like even for example, like if we have that kind of idea that even aspiring to become a Buddha, aspiring to become an Arahat will be mixed by ignorance and craving, Bhante. So I think that is the wrong the idea that need to be corrected.
Yeah. So even we are wishing for attainment of nirvana, just even that, do we need to have? That is the question. Because to fill the Parissamuppada, that's why, as you said, these Paramatta Jathikas fit here. There are instances that we do acts triggered by our ignorance. That is true, that is obvious. Even wholesome deeds that we do. But the ultimate explanation of Parissamuppada is whether you have such a wish or intention or ignorance or a craving, doesn't matter. As long as you are not an Arahant, as long as the ignorance remains latently, how pure your intention, doesn't matter. This ignorance would affect your act. How that effect has been mentioned. Because of the ignorance, because of the idea of self, because of the idea of I, even of an anagami, this ignorance has made an effect into our mind stream unconsciously. A big example, sometimes the childhood experiences would affect us even while we have grown up without our conscious. So a psychotherapist would inquire our life and they would find, okay, this was the reason in her childhood or his childhood, and they just try to remove that fear or whatever unpleasant experience that he had or she had, and then what happens? Her behavior comes into normalcy. So likewise, and also we can see the effects of certain habits that we have from samsara. So likewise, unconsciously, each and every non-arahant, each and every non-arahant's mind is influenced by this ignorance. So what happens unconsciously, this act that we do as non-arahants gets an extra force, extra speed, extra effect. So this effect is caused by this ignorance unconsciously. We are unable to get out of it. This effect becomes lessened when we practice the vipassana. It's not fully, completely out of that. Cannot completely take it out. We feel like, I would say like, feel means we feel the mind becomes so calmer and subtler. That is, which is different calmness from the samatha meditation. So that's because the reason is the anusaya is getting affected. Anyway, so normally even during the vipassana, we have this effect. We have this effect of avijja. So whatever karma we do, this avijja affect the chetana. That was the reason that extra speed, extra energy, extra activation of the chetana causes, that activation remains in the mind stream. That would bring a rebirth. So what happens is, of an arahant, when this avijja is removed, this effect is not found in the mind stream. So there is no energy remaining within the mind stream. So he creates no new karma. It doesn't mean that he doesn't do any act. He does do acts. He does acts like we do. But the thing is, a potency is not implanted within our mind stream. Why is that? Because of the absence of these latent defilements, which are called Paramatta Jathikas. So as you said, Robin, the ultimate explanation of the Paticcasamuppada has to be done with the bringing of Paramatta Jathikas. So in the conclusion, if a non-arahant do whatever act, wholesome or unwholesome, that chetana is affected by the uneradicated avijja, and that becomes, that effect causes a certain energy to remain within the mind stream, and that energy would bring the results. Why that energy had the nature of giving a result? Why didn't it give anything else? Why this karma didn't produce a rock? Why this karma didn't produce a tree? Why it only produced nama and rupa? That is attributed to the tanha, craving. Craving wants to continue to live. The nama rupa has to sustain. That is the wish that we have. We call bhava tanha or bhava raga for that. So that craving is molding this karma. So it produces something which is needed by craving. So we normally say karma, in one way, karma satisfies the craving. Karma satisfies the craving. If the craving for sensuality is not suppressed even, it brings a life which is prone to sex, which have a bhava rupa. If the craving for the matter is not suppressed, the karma, if it is fully suppressed by attaining jhanas and also practicing the rupa viraga, this karma is not capable of giving a life with rupa. So we are born in the arupa realm. So likewise, karma also has a great effect on, tanha also have a great effect of karma that we have to discuss in a separate chapter, it's separate lesson. So for the time being, as you said, all these defilements, the latent defilements affect the karma. That karma brings the results. I think, hope it's clear.
Okay, Bhante. Thank you very much, Bhante. So Bhante, like for example, there are some people that are thinking that when we are aspiring to become an arahat, there is craving, Bhante. But so is it correct if we say that when we aspire something good, like for example, to be liberated, that is called kusala chanda, Bhante? So is it the correct destination, Bhante?
No, normally that's how we call. Normally that's how we call. But I would not say that it is. There is a possibility that the craving it can be mixed with craving. There is a possibility. So it's not like we call, because Buddha mentioned the craving to become an arahant is also supportive in some senses. So some cases it is pure kusala chanda. In some cases it can be craving. Even we can have craving towards nirvana, not as an ultimate object, but as a conceptual object. As a conceptual object. So, so therefore, I would not say that all the good aspirations in the sense of a good object, like wishing to be so and so, is not always wholesome intention. Sometimes that can be craving, but it is not harmful. It's not harmful.
Okay, Bhante.
Yeah.
Okay, Bhante. Thank you very much, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Yeah, morning, Bhante. I have a follow-up question on Robin's question. So here you mentioned mostly about the patisandi, the rebirth. So, but it's not just always the rebirth, right, Bhante? Because for the case of, let's say, the Magga Citta, at the moment of Magga Citta, we still have the avijja and so on. So because of that, that is why it gave the result as the phala citta, right, Bhante?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Bhante.
It's still affected. Still affected.
Right. Right, Bhante. Please go ahead, Sayali Punya.
Good morning, Bhante.
Morning, Sally.
I have a few questions. The first question is come from one Chinese participant. He asked, how do we translate the Paramatta Jathikas into English?
Paramatta Jathikas into English. This is the weak point that I have giving translations. Paramatta means ultimate, right? Paramatta means ultimate. Jati. Now we divide the word. Paramatta is ultimate, right? I'm also constructing the translation now to be true. I never attempted to make a translation because it's quite difficult for me. But I think if Venerable Sayadaw Nandamala has translated the Paramatta Dipani, surely he would have given a translation for that. Then Jati. Jati here means the group. A species or one kind of it belongs to that. It's a one kind of a group we can call. There can be another good word, like sometimes jati refers to species. It refers to a certain kind of group. So what we are going to say is jati. Jati ka means belonging to. Ka, belonging to. Belonging to the group of ultimates. So this is the idea, belonging to the group of ultimates. So why this was not said at Paramatta Dhamma? Paramatta Dhammas have the nature of arising, persisting, and passing away, then mixed with some other realities, and they are not in such a state. So we don't call them Paramatta Dhammas for the easiness of the to convey the idea easily. But if someone can say Dhamma can cover everything, so can't we call it Paramatta Dhammas? Yes, we can. For sure we can. Because the word Dhamma covers everything. There's nothing that the word Dhamma cannot cover. Dhamma is not in the sense of the teachings. The word Dhamma, the Pali word Dhamma, has the ability to cover everything. Like Atta. So even it covers the Panyati. I think you are aware of that. So why didn't we call it Paramatta Dhamma? Because we want to express that they are they do have different characteristics. So want to explain it in a very clear manner. That's why we didn't take the word Paramatta Dhamma to them. But they are not Panyati. They are not Panyati. So they are ultimate. They belong to the group of ultimate. So that's why this Jati is group. Ka shows that it's a Taddhita, like it belongs to this group. What group? Of Paramattas. So the reality is belonging to the group of Paramattas. This is the meaning, right? Sorry, the natures I would call. Natures belonging to the group of belonging to the ultimate group of ultimate natures. Yeah, it's a redundant, it's coming, repetition is there. Just I'm not very good in the vocabulary to give a very nice translation. So they are natures, but they belong to the group of ultimate natures. So they belong to the group of ultimacy, like they are within the ultimacy. So
But-
if someone can come with a good translation, I would also prefer to look into it. Yeah.
So that means they have the potential to arise, but not arising yet.
Yeah. So they can be in another few lectures. To the end of this session, I will be discussing what is the existing nature of each and everything that I explained in the chart. What is the existing nature? So when we come to Paramatta Dhammas, their existing nature should be explained in one way, Paramatta Jathikas in another way. So, but I think what you are saying is they are possible to arise. That is their existing nature. Yeah, we'll have a more holistic view on this at a later chapter, later lesson. Yeah.
Okay, the next question is, generally when we say like dosa, all these things, we say there are 3 stages, but today you mentioned there are 2 stages, right?
Yeah.
So why?
Because now these are the 3 stages. Yeah. We should write for the listeners. The latent stage, for example, we take a defilement anger. The latent anger, obsessive or obsession, in the level of obsession. Then transgressive. We use the Pali terms anusaya, pariyutthana, vitikkama. Right, vitikkama. So these 2 are the dosa. In these 2 levels, dosa can be found as a mental factor. Dosa can be found as a mental factor. For example, we get hatred towards someone. So it can be observed as a mental factor. And now that hatred, for example, we dislike a mosquito. So we are having irritating feelings. So obsessive dosa is there. We can observe it as a mental factor. If we couldn't stop it, we would splash on it and we'll kill it. So even at that moment, dosa can be observed in our mind. Still a mental factor. So in both these occasions, you can see the mental factor. So that's why I collected them and said the obsessive level, because the obsessive dosa, which couldn't be prevented, coming into an extreme level, is called transgressive dosa, vitikkama. So vitikkama is a higher level of pariyutthana. Pariyutthana means arising at a mental state. So when it arises at a mental state, we can stop it at a certain level. But if we couldn't stop it, we go to the level of transgression, of killing and someone. So that's why I group them as one. And latent level, they remain as a potency, not as a mental factor. They remain as a potency. So that's why I categorize them as 2. So for your further notice, if you have, I think in Myanmar and also among the English readers, Theravadians, there is a very famous book called Abhidhamma in Daily Life. Even in Sri Lanka, you can buy this book. Written by Ashin Janaka, which is very effective to apply Abhidhamma into daily life, which was written by one of the erudite scholars in Myanmar, very, very respected. And you can without any fear, you can refer into the like references. The ones who studied in Myanmar knows his erudition. So it's called Ashin Janaka Bivansa. Ashin Janaka Vamsa. So in his if you go into this book, please go to the moha, the explanation of moha. He says there are 2 types of moha, the latent and the obsession. Not that he doesn't go into the transgression, because transgression and obsession can be put into as a one group. So even he says there are 2 stages of moha, anusaya and pariyutthana.
So this type of classification only for the Moha group?
No, whatever.
Even Nova group as well?
Yes, can be. Moha, Lobha, Dosa, whatever Kilesa.
Okay. Thank you, Bhante. My next question is, could you please explain the difference between the Kammasati and the Kammasamagita?
That's another very good question. Kammasati and Kammasamagita. Right before maybe some people are writing still. So if you go to the handout, listeners, you can see 1.42. 1.42. We have some these natures listed in the literature as Anusaya, Vasana, Kammasati, Kammasamagita, Charita, Asaya, Adimutta, or all, right? So Kamma is related to three: Kammasati, Kammasamagita, and Charita. Charita and Kammasati are identical. Kammasati and Charita are identical. I shall erase this. So I'll just focus on, as the question came, as Kammasati, force of Kamma, and Kammasamagita. This is the karmic force which is capable in producing a rebirth. Yeah, it's something that we have to clearly know the differentiate in order to go into advanced Theravada studies. So this is the mind stream, right? Our normal diagram. So this is the Kamma. So when Kamma is done, we know a Kamma Sati, a force, is remaining. So such, now if we say Kamma many times, right? So Kammas are accumulated. If we take this as a Kamma Sati. So within this Kamma Sati, only some Kammas can give a rebirth, not all. Not all can give rebirth. We know that Kamma Pata and normal Kamma. We had an intention to kill some animal, but we didn't do it. That is a Kamma, but it cannot give a rebirth, right? So Kamma Sati is the big group, the larger group. Kammasamagita is a part of it. It's a part of it. Not all. Not all forces of Kamma become Kammasamagita. So how do we know this exactly with references? I can, yeah, if I'll remind myself, or if someone can put it in the chat box or the group, I will give you the reference next week to the entire class. It says that according to Theravadians, Kammas, as soon as you become Arahant, for example, if this is the mind moment that you become Arahant, this is the mind moment, Arahanthood, Arahatta Magga, right? Then this is the Arahatta Pala, right? Right? So after this, so actually, sorry, from here, after the Palachitta is arising, because as soon as we become Arahant, we get rid of all the rebirths. Why is that? When Avidya and Tanha is eradicated, the Kamma is unable to give a rebirth. So with the attainment of Arahanthood, Kammasamagita is gone. But the Kamma Sati will remain. What is the remaining Kamma Sati? The force of Kamma which is not going to give a rebirth. So how do we differentiate? That's why it's very, very subtle thing. Now this is more subtle than the Chitta Chetasika. Chitta Chetasikas, we can differentiate them as separate realities. So in the commentary says the Kamma Sati remains still Arahantahud. But sorry, Kamma Samangita remains still the Arahanthood. I beg your pardon, Kamma Samangita. Kamma Sati remains still the Parinibbana. That is obvious. Because Mahamoggallana also had to face kammas that was given as a result of his past deeds. Even Buddha had to experience. But with the attainment of Buddhahood under the Bodhi tree, his kamma samangita was exhausted. So what is the kamma samangita here? It's a force. The kamma sati is a force. Out of this force, some kammas have the capability of producing results. So when that ability is lost, why it is lost? When avidya and tanha is eradicated, that is the time, because it needs the support of this. That is the time it doesn't have that. But kamma sati to give results when someone is alive, it doesn't need the support of avidya and tanha. It can still give results, like good and bad results for the kammas that have done in the past. But it needs the kamma samangita, the giving rebirth part needs. So for example, now Angulimala's kammas, now Angulimala did a lot of bad deeds, like very heinous ones. Heinous doesn't mean that anantariya, very bad deeds. All of his deeds could have brought him rebirth in the woeful realm. But when he became Arahant, the ability of those deeds to give a rebirth was lost. So that ability is gone. So we can say the ability, it's Kamma Samangita is an ability, that ability is gone. So after he became Arahant, he's freed. But it says that he had to experience, like while he was going for Pindapata, a stone that was thrown somewhere else, unfortunately comes and hit on his head. So a stick that was thrown to some other animal comes and hit him. And when he comes back to the monastery, most of the cases, he is with blood. So Buddha mentioned, take it easy, because these effects that you are gaining compared to what you have done is nothing. If you have not become an Arahant, you would have been experiencing such devastating results in the future births. So the same kamma, that means there is no such different kamma called samma samangita. The same kamma, when it has the ability. Now, for example, killing remains as a kamma force. It has the ability to give rebirth. When one becomes Arahant, that ability is gone. It can only give results while he is still alive. So some kammas become kamma sati. Naturally, they don't have the ability to give a result. So therefore, because they don't fall into kamma sati if the kamma was not completed. So likewise, kamma sati is the bigger group. Kamma samangita is the ability of the karma to give a rebirth only. So that is why it was expressed differently.
Okay, thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
All right, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bhante. There is no more hand and there is no more question, Bhante. Okay. And I think it's also time, Bhante. So
okay. I thank you for joining and I wish you good luck. And also may this merit assist our own liberations and also for the prolongation of the Buddha's teaching. Buddha sasanang chiran tittatu. Buddha sasanang chiran tittatu. Buddha sasanang chiran tittatu. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Bhante.